Hello.
Going
Good. How are you?
good.
Good. I know a couple of our core folks who are usually on this meeting, actually quite a few of them, had conflicts come up and weren't going to be able to join, unfortunately. Um, so maybe we'll just give it another minute and see if we get anyone else to join in, and then we'll have a nice, intimate dialogue.
There's no hurry on my end. We can start whenever you want. It's funny. I put together a PowerPoint and slides and stuff, but if it's better just to have a conversation, that's also good too.
Commissioner Mitchell, do you have a preference?
It matters not with me. With regard to communications, I've been through the 403 fire last year. It was only last year. And I sit in all of our ES council meetings. We always have a challenge with radios and communication and such. But a lot of it's a matter of funding, not a matter of knowing what to do. It's just trying to buy new radios. They're really expensive. And so
Yeah.
I usually just lean on them to tell us how much money they need and we figure out how to go find it. But I always have more to learn. I know that.
Today I was going to talk more around public communication. My role at the State Forest Service is to oversee our communications department, and we really focus on communication about wildfire mitigation. That's sort of our jam at the state. And so not so much like in times of emergency as much as those fire safe behaviors part of that.
Okay, that'd be excellent. If we want to, I'm going to go grab my notebook because this sounds like it's really something I want to write down because I've been kind of running the lead on, there's new Central Colorado Forest Collaborative where we're working with all of Pike National Forest to use land tender, which is a U.S. Forest Service tool. And then I'm going to be reaching out because I've been the only one in Park County participating on it to get our fire districts and the community up to speed on how we can add them into this tool to figure out where the most beneficial mitigation on private property can happen to tie in with the Forest Service and then go find money.
Excellent.
So I'm going to go grab my notebook and I'll be right back and then we'll see if anyone else shows up.
All right. And Teddy, do you have no point in wasting slides if you put them together? Do you see the option to share your screen?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can blow through some of the stuff and focus on a few things that maybe Commissioner Mitchell may find of value.
Yeah, that sounds great. Teddy, I think we're ready when you are.
Sure. Well, why don't I share my screen? What I'll do is, like I said, just kind of just go through these pretty quickly and then see if there's any sort of information you might find useful or want to dive into a little more. Give me just a second here. I'll share the screen. So is that visible? I'll open this up. All right, cool.
Yes.
So are you familiar with Colorado State Forest Service, Commissioner Mitchell? Do you know about us? Okay, cool. Well, I'll skip all this stuff here. Just so you know a little bit more about myself, I actually worked for Larimer County before I got this job. So I was there during, I don't know how long you've been in your position, but I worked alongside Commissioners Donnelly, Johnson, and the late Lou Gator before I came here about 5 years ago. So I love county government, by the way. I'm a huge fan. I not only was an employee, but I don't think until you really understand the services that they offer or need them that you really do appreciate it. So I am one of the believers in the value of county government. So just so you're aware, that is my background. I'll skip over this if you're familiar with the State Forest Service and what we have to offer. I just will point out one thing is that, we do have, like you had mentioned, funding. We have access to lots of different pots of funding, primarily through the state or federal resources. So we currently have our forest restoration, wildfire risk mitigation grants are open. So have you applied for any of those before?
Well, let me tell you where the challenge is for Park County is, we don't have the bandwidth at the county level to be able to administer those grants. And I've been working, we've got South Platte Ranger District, which has their own kind of cooperative with lots of cooperating agencies in the Jeffco, that region. They've applied for some, and we just wrote a letter of supporting a grant yesterday. I am working on getting where we are with CCFC to be able to get our fire districts involved to where they can be the lead, because we don't have homeowners associations in a lot of parts next to forest. We all just live out here in the middle of nowhere, and we don't have lots of rules and regulations, which is exactly how we like it. And so we don't have an umbrella to apply for those grants for, except the county or our fire districts.
Yeah. If you do have a particular project in mind, do you have a CWPP in any parts of Park County? Call a community wildfire protection plan?
Our emergency services, our new assistant director comes from the wildfire fighting world. We will stand that up kind of under his umbrella. He has only been with us for a while and is in training right now. So we will, but I mean, we've got 18,000 people and 2,100 square miles of land.
Yeah.
So it's a huge challenge.
Yeah, it's true because the reason why I mentioned it is because the way that our grant program works, our main one, which we call furworm, but it's forest restoration wildfire risk mitigation, you actually have to have a Colorado State Forest Service forester, one of our supervisory foresters who manage our field offices, help put the application together, and then they don't necessarily implement it, but they are the sort of the forestry expert in the room a lot of times, because we do work with a lot of fire protection districts who may have a smaller wildland division. We may work with local government, HOAs, who don't really understand how to write a forest prescription or kind of how to turn their ideas into an actual project. That's what we're here for. Like, that's what we do. And so when you do have a CWPP, strongly encourage you. I believe, gosh, I'm trying to think, Park County service area. Well, I'll just go to the next slide and show you where our offices are. So we've got, I believe it'd be Woodland Park. And so Andy Schlossberg, who I work really closely with, he is there. We also have one in Salida. So if you ever get this done, I mean, this is when you have a CWPP, it creates a strong foundation in which to then apply for funding. That's one of the reasons why we have a whole group of wildfire mitigation staff out there helping get these updated so that people can apply for money. Now, there was a ton of money that came through at the federal and state level after the large fires, and it's still flowing, but the flow is ebbed a little bit. But it's encouraged you to do that. If you do, you're not on your own. We would be here to basically, in some areas, it's funny, you talk to some supervisory foresters and they're like, yeah, furworm project kind of runs itself. I go out there, I make sure that the treatments were implemented correctly. I help them advise on contractor selection, and then they do the work. Others, we do a lot of hand holding. So just know that we are a huge resource for that. Strongly encourage you to reach out to us if you ever get that implemented. And then I know it's not necessarily in your neck of the woods directly, but we just opened a satellite office in Leadville and Frisco. And so while, again, not specifically where you are, we are trying to move into areas where the need is high. We do work a lot with folks in Park County through our local partners in the Jefferson County areas, particularly, but some of those get all the way up there, like Rotary, Wildfire Ready, and a few others. But just want to point out, if you're curious where we are located, these are our spots. And I believe it'd be Woodland Park. There may be some, I think Park County is one of the only county that maybe is split in half, and Golden shares part of it. I'd have to look. I can find out for you though before we're done. who you would want to reach out to. But you can always, if you contact one, they'll say, well, that's not our service area. You should reach out to this one, but I'll look at that for you. And then just kind of moving through, I don't think we need to talk necessarily about this. I was gonna speak specifically about fire safe behaviors, not necessarily in times of emergency. We focus on fire mitigation, specifically things like know your wildfire risk. So we do have a lot of good information on fire risk. We produce what I'll go back up a few slides here. So this data on forest and trees and wildfire risk. We did it in 2022, and we'll do it again in 3 years, which I guess puts us into 2025. We update what we call the Colorado Wildfire Risk Assessment. So if you go to coloradoforestatlas.org, you can type it anywhere you want to in your county and see where that risk is associated in terms of a data point. It's not like the be all end all. I mean, it's so many on the ground factors really influence how at risk a community or a particular home was. But it's a good place to go if you're thinking about where to put resources and where you might need to have some concern. It's a good place to take a look, especially if you have a new emergency manager, they may be familiar with that resource. U.S. Forest Service also has good risk data, but that's one of our specialties for the state. We just updated that about a year ago. And then I'll talk a little bit of the home ignition zone stuff as well. So if you're curious, we can talk a little bit more about some of the key messages that our agency puts out there, but for the sake of time, we can move on. But if you're curious, I could talk a little bit more about that.
No, I'm good. I've been in this for about a year, trying to really dig deep.
So have you seen either one of these guides?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, we can move on from that as well. These are very helpful. I would say, gosh, like my division is the one that actually distributes the home ignition zone guide. We send tens of thousands of these out a year. So if you have not ordered some, Commissioner Mitchell, I'd encourage you or someone in Park County to order a batch of those. They're really great handouts. And that wildfire property insurance guide was actually reviewed about a year ago. So that's very current as well. We've got a few other guides with extension, specifically helpful to homeowners, but these are the ones I wanted to mention. And then there's, if you bear with me a second, I will open up. I'll share with you where you can actually order these if you're curious. We've got an order form. I'll drop it in the chat for you. And sometimes it's me filling the orders. So, but oftentimes it's one of our student interns or our student hourlies or one of our communication staff. But every once in a while, we're a team. I'll go ahead and pop those in into the mail.
And Teddy, just out of curiosity, like how and where does the State Forest Service make those available? Is that, do you just provide it to like counties and other nonprofits to distribute, or yeah?
Indirectly. So they're available at all our field offices. So again, you don't have one directly in Park County, which is, you can't just like drive down the road and grab it necessarily. So I'd recommend ordering them, but that's how we make them available is you can order them, ship them to you. The home ignition zone guides, any of our publications, if you order more than 200 copies, we basically have a conversation to say, why do you need so many there? We can only afford to pass out so many. So we do have a cap, but we don't charge for home ignition zone guides. So we've never denied anybody an order who has a real valid reason. Like, for example, we had one come in for 500 the other day, and we're like, why do you need 500? And they're like, we just got this grant. We're doing 500 site assessments. We want to bring one to every site assessment with the homeowner. We're like, oh, that's what they're for. And so they're at no cost, and we use primarily state and some federal funding to keep those printed and available and coming your way.
Yeah, I could make those available to all of our fire districts because they will do home site assessments. And then they could leave that with the homeowner to be able to educate them further. We have a lot of new people who move up here from the Front Range or from city, and they don't quite get what they're getting into.
Yeah. No, I can totally understand. I love Park County, by the way. My brother used to live in Gunnison, and we would drive through there from Fort Collins all the time and would stop, and always a great place to stop and play. So I'm a bit jealous that I wish I was one of them, but unfortunately I just can't just peel out. I'd love to live there too. I was going to share this one, so I'll drop another link in the chat just so you're aware this exists, Commissioner Mitchell. This is basically what I would say is the online version of our home ignition zone guide. So when we put out our home ignition zone guide, the latest version, I think it was 2020 or 2021, we updated this page. So this is actually a really great page because it is basically like the Cliff Notes version of a 16-page document. And it's really helpful for folks. And I forgot to mention too, that home ignition zone guide is available in Spanish as well. So I'm not sure how large of a Spanish speaking population you have in Park County, but we do have that one available in Spanish. And then on our website, there's a translate function. It's through Google Translate. It's somewhat effective, but it typically can get the job done. I want to show this slide just because obviously the end of July, early August, those were when the fires were happening on the Front Range. And unfortunately, that typically is what draws the media's attention. So I just thought this was insightful. It's anecdotal, you would think, when there's active fires, the threat is high, that people are actively seeking information. And we've known that for a long time here. So I was going to share that with anyone on the call, that spike right there is a direct, those are all of our wildfire pages. You can just see like, it's in the news. The governor's talking about it, the radio DJs, that it's my neighbor's talking about it. It's all over the place. It really does drive people's attention towards this topic, and that just plays out on our website resources, but we see the same thing in terms of calls to our field offices as well. And this may be of use to you. We just updated our wildland fuels management practices in grass-dominated landscapes, grassland fire, basically. And so this may be of use to something you would want to share, Katie, to other people out there, because this is really like hot off the digital presses, so to speak. We did it with the Southern Rockies Fire Science Network and the Great Plains Fire Science Exchange. And I'm just going to drop some more chats or links in the chat for you there, Commissioner Mitchell and Katie, if you're curious. So I just want to this is very technical. So we were going to put a guide together, and we're like, why don't we just put this online so we can make it easily accessible, get feedback, and update it more in real time. But we're working on some public-facing, easier to digest versions of this information. And so I'm going to drop one more link in the chat, and that is to our latest podcast episode. So, I mean, if you're ever going to hop in the car and you got 25 minutes to kill and you're interested in grassland fire, this is a really great way to sort of take all that information and digest in a very easy format. It's basically a conversation between one of our communications folks and one of our fire specialists with some information supplemented from a conference that they went to. But really good overview about grassland fire, fuels management, the impact that can make.
Awesome. I'll do that. South Park is pretty much all grassland.
Totally.
Rangeland. It doesn't grow quite like it does in a lower altitude. But we can't get anywhere in 45 minutes. I can get anywhere in an hour and a half in Park County. So I listen to podcasts all the time. So I'll learn about grassland fires. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's good. I listened to it on the way back on a drive from Pueblo. I was like, this is really good. We have other episodes that might be of interest to you, but this one in particular is pretty cool because there's just, especially on the Front Range after the Marshall Fire, there's such an interest in this, and wanted to make sure that folks knew that if I don't imagine any county commissioner out there is going to read that web page in depth. That's not really their job. But when I worked for Larimer County, I know our commissioners drove all around too. So I was like, well, if you're going to hop in the car, then you got this on Spotify. You can stream it through YouTube. And then the last resource I was going to mention was just our Live Wildfire Ready campaign. I don't need to go into any real detail on this with you, but I'm happy to talk more about it. We currently, and again, I'll provide more detail if you want, but one of the things I did think was going to be of some interest was just when we put this campaign together with a marketing firm 2 years ago and then launched it last year, we did a bunch of research, literature review articles, interviews, and things like that. And so we got some really good insights on things that are intuitive and things that were sort of validating. And some of those I was just going to share here. So in terms of how you might want to communicate about fire, this was really helpful to us when building our campaign and evolving our own communication strategies when it comes to fire safe behaviors. These quotes are from people that were interviewed. So I'll just kind of briefly explain what each of these means. In terms of that first one, how many people say, wow, I didn't know where to start? We've known this for a long time. Like when we talk to people on the ground, I get the secondhand from our foresters who actually do this work, is that homeowners are often like confused on where to go and they feel overwhelmed. Like, a 16-page guide can often be very overwhelming for folks. So we heard that. That community theme is just this idea that people do what their neighbors do. So if we can get more people doing the work, and they're more likely. I know that in Park County in particular, the homes are probably more spread out because I can see them kind of up in the hills as I drive through. But that being said, if somebody's got a piece of forestry equipment on their property and their neighbor's like, what are you doing over there? That's probably more effective at getting them to actually do that on their own than it is a campaign, if that makes any sense. Obviously very intuitive. And then that last one on this slide is just that it's not living with fire like it should be, it's living against fire. That speaks to that one of those messages I had earlier around just trying to change that culture around fire in Colorado. It's part of the landscape. It's not going anywhere. So we just have to, we are living in a fire adapted landscape. We need to adapt to fire, not fight against it. And then the last one is just the values and priorities theme that came out. What I liked about this is that we kind of have known at the state level that most people go to local resources to get information about fire. They go to their fire protection district, they go to their local state forest service office, extension office, they may call their local office of emergency management, the sheriff's office, whoever provides that information, a local nonprofit, collaborative, or whatever, because that's where they have that trust. And so that's something that we've known for a long time. It was validating to hear that again. Some of the things we're doing with our campaign, I'll skip over, but we can talk more about that if you're curious. And then here's just some things that you can do, I would say. I was thinking, like, what could a county commissioner or an office of emergency management, sheriff's office do to sort of complement what the state does? So I put this slide together as ways in which that we can all kind of align on certain things. But we can talk more about this in detail if you like. And then the last slide I had was just, I wanted to share this picture. This is our deputy state forester, our second in command, and her home, this is the Alexander Mountain Fire. So her home was actually one of the ones that was saved. She'd done some prior mitigation work. U.S. Forest Service had put in fuel break parts of her neighborhood. And so between those two things and firefighters, her home was saved. And so I was just bringing this up because, it's not theoretical. Like, we actually live in these places too. We're all civil servants in a certain degree. We provide services, but we're also residents of these communities, these areas that are fire prone. And this one touched real close to home for us. And we've known folks during the East Troublesome Fire and the Cameron Peak Fire, both our staff who've evacuated. I mean, one of my staff's evacuated 3 times since I've been here in 5 years because she lives in the foothills west of Fort Collins, from the High Park Fire, Cameron Peak Fire, the Alexander Mountain Fire. It's just like, I just want to point that out that, for us at the State Forest Service, as it is for all of you, this is more than just a job.
Yeah,
So I'm happy to go into any more detail, and I'll stop sharing my slides and just happy to answer any questions you've got.
Well, no, the main thing we're working on is we're kind of the tale of 2 parts of the county. Kenosha Pass is our breaking point. Down in the South Platte, Bailey area, a lot more density. The South Platte Ranger District and the Forest Service, we're 61% public lands. Majority is all U.S. Forest, Pike National Forest. They've got Bailey Firewise, a community, overreaching community thing. On the other side, we're a lot more spread out, not much density except for Fairplay and a couple neighborhoods. So that's where I'm pulling together, is just how do we get some critical mass to be able to help those homeowners who are interested. Some of them are saying that tree will never get cut down. We get it. They're passionate about what they bought where they're living, but our fire departments do a pretty good job. It's just that how to get that loosely structured through CWPP to be able to get grants. That's where we're getting, then get some of that labor, because a lot of people are older. I mean, I can run a chainsaw, but my arms they give out pretty quick. On the bar I need, I've got an 18-inch, so.
Yeah. Do you have the number, like, are there contractors in the area that you can rely on, or do you have to bring folks out from Buena Vista or Salida or further down in Conifer, places like that?
Well, the Forest Service has sucked up most of them because they've done a lot of work in Park County.
That's great.
Park Ranger District mainly, so they've done a good job. It is tough, and mainly it's just the financial part of it. We have friends that we all get together and help, like an elderly couple who needs to have some trees felled. We've got chippers on the west side of Kenosha. They've gone a couple chippers on the north side of Kenosha, west, east, however you call it, because it's supposed to run north-south. But we're extremely rural and extremely understaffed, but we're you know, we're gonna build off of what the Forest Service has done and establish our plan for neighborhoods based on where they've got really good fire breaks cut.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's sort of the magic formula that we've been looking at is like where do you have if they've got a break there that can at least slow a fire down potentially. If they've done the mitigation around the home, then the firefighters can set up and protect it. And that's kind of what happened with our deputy state forester. She's like had done some work. They were able to set up sprinklers, and her neighbor lost her home, but hers made it. You know, and it's tough like that, and that's sort of the way it can be. This is why we encourage people to kind of take that personal responsibility. And one of the things that we did with the Live Wildfire Ready campaign, which I've liked, is that we've tried to focus on those like practical, low cost actions. You know, it's not always just taking out trees. If you can, you know, work on that first 5 feet of space, you know, remove vegetation around the home. If again, it's not cost effective for people to just reside their home and put new roof on, but you can like screen your vents. You can keep your gutters clean. You can keep your propane tank off your. I mean, it's just an example. All right, she lost her propane tank, but she didn't lose her home. So you know, if her propane tank's next to her home is gone, basically.
Yeah,
You
I
know, and so
recommend
that's where we're
people
like
bury their
encouraging
tank.
people.
If they're building a new house, I say bury it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And that's just not, you know, a propane tank for the home itself. It's like, you know, people have gas grills and things. Like just don't store your firewood. Don't. So we've tried to really focus on that because we know that overwhelming and those cost barrier things. And people are like, well, I don't want to cut trees down. And then we can start with other things. You keep your grass mowed. You can, you know, take out the wood mulch and put in rock and that kind of stuff. And so that's why, and we use the handouts and things from Live Wildfire Ready as a supplement as well to the home emission zone guide, because it's like here's an easy checklist of like 7 or 8 actions you can take that shouldn't cost you a lot of money, and I would bet you're doing half of them anyway. And
Yeah,
so if fire danger is high, it might be worth your time that evening or in the morning after to just clean your deck off, you know, mow down your grass, and just be ready if the inevitable eventually hits you. You know.
yeah, if we're getting a red flag day too. You know,
Yeah.
I think we're pretty good. A lot of it is the new people who move in here.
Yeah.
And the links that you provided, if they're your guides electronically, on our electronic webpage, we're doing a This Is How You Park County to try to
So
educate people. We will just link those in and say, you know, I always tell people, do your due diligence and learn what you're getting into. Don't
yeah.
want to scare you, just want to prepare you for living at 10,000 feet.
Yeah, in
9,000.
an environment adapted to fire, you know, that's what's interesting too is there's one of the things I've often found from a public communications perspective that's enlightening is that people who move from out of state or parts of the state and to different places think that like the forests are always like this. Like, oh, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, it's dense, it's heavily wooded. It's like, well, that's because fire hasn't burned it in 150 years. And honestly, like I'd have to look at our insect and disease maps. Park County seems to me to be pretty good when it comes to some insects and diseases. I know there's a lot of western spruce budworm in the south part of the county and certain areas, but you know, has been thankfully not. It's not like Grand County and places like that where it's 90% dead. You know, but
We've
there's
got some
still a
pine
lot of
beetle movement.
overgrown areas that are just ripe for burning if it gets dry enough and hot enough,
Yeah, the forests
windy enough.
have not been kept clean. We have some pine beetle moving in. I'm just praying for a couple weeks of, you know, -20, and that will help us quite a bit. So hopefully we have a really cold winter.
Yeah, for sure. It's crazy because it's of all of the bugs, you know, bark beetles get a lot of like attention because they kill trees, you know, and they're just very visible. But it's the spruce budworm that is the most widespread in the state, and that's why it comes to mind for Park County because I do our forest health report every year with our entomologist, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's one of those areas. In fact, let me pull up. If you've never seen this before, Commissioner Mitchell, it's really helpful.
I'd like to
From an
see it because
IEP
I
perspective.
have some, I live on the side of, at the base of Badger Mountain. And there is a whole swath of kindling that is dead spruce. Um,
Yeah,
and it's on such a steep slope that we just need fire to take it out and just not burn my home down in, you know, while it happens, but we're mitigated really well.
yeah. Some of our older foresters will say there's 3 ways you're going to lose your trees. It's fire, it's bugs, or you. Otherwise it's going to decompose and it's just going to be there and it's going to. So again, I just share with you our insect and disease map, and you can use the little toggle thing on the left to just type in wherever you want to. But
Cool.
and then there's a forest health report. I'll just drop that in too if you're curious, because we
Good.
do some analysis. I'm not specific at the county level, but we do it at the area level. In fact, I'll just go ahead and share. I think it's, yeah, here we go. Well, I'll just share the whole thing, and you can look at like the southeast area, the northeast area will give you kind of what you'd be looking for. If you go, on this page, you'll just see a map of the state, and you can click on any
Okay.
of those, and it gives you some of the biggest bugs of concern looking for park. Yeah, western spruce budworm shows up in the northeast area for Park County, and then in the southeast area, it's mountain pine beetle was mentioned. And that's just how our agency splits the county in half, and where are the concerns. But that's why that map is so great. He flies the state every year with U.S. Forest Service and actually maps all that stuff. So it's where we can see trends over time of where they're moving. And so that's where you might find that of value if you're thinking about where you might have some high fire risk due to insect infestations.
Yeah. Well, Teddy, thank you. Good information. I'm honored to have a one-on-one with you. Really awesome and effective use of my day. So,
Yeah, well,
thank
I
you.
just want to say that, like, like people, I mean, we don't have an office in the community or a town, but often people don't know who we are because we don't have land. We don't, well, not the U.S. Forest Service, we don't have a logo that's on, trailheads and things. And so strongly encourage you to reach out. Again, I would say, depending on where you're interested, Woodland Park or Golden, and they are here to help. That's what we do. And really, it's that glue, those connecting of resources. Like, we are the conduit for all U.S. Forest Service funds that flow through the state, flow through us. And then we, with our partners at the Department of Natural Resources, we bring a ton of state funding. And so every year we've got about $8 million in furworm grants. When we've had some particular grant opportunities focused on local government, none that are currently, the coffers are empty. We'd love for them to get filled again, but they might. And all it takes is another mega fire, and then they're going to divert money back into forest management and fire mitigation. But for now, we still have a nice kitty of funding. If you've got projects that are ready to go, or ideas of what you want to do, reach out to an office, and we're happy to help you get it into actual implementation. That's the best way to get those homeowners together, is to have like a CWPP that can be applied for by a larger entity, because individual homeowners can't apply. It's challenging that way for us.
Well, that's helpful. I will talk to our assistant emergency management director, who comes from that wildland fire world, and we will figure out a plan to how to get this done. So this is a piece of a puzzle that I have been looking for, and I appreciate that. And we will continue our work on educating and trying to ever make it better. So
We're here to
thank
help.
you, Judy. And Woodland Park is my area. I live in Lake George. So
Okay, yeah, it would. I love the staff at Woodland Park. They've got a great. Andy Schlossberg is awesome. So, reach out. They're here to help you.
all right,
That's
thank
really
you.
If it's
great
not
to
them, they'll
hear,
connect you to who
Commissioner.
can. They're very well connected.
And Teddy, I was just gonna say, um, I have kind of a group of commissioners who are kind of my go-to, who are really knowledgeable and have a lot of unfortunate experience with wildfire and trying to do more of this kind of proactive work. But I feel like we are starting to expand into more and more counties that they are starting to see the threat of wildfire. Like Boulder comes to mind, right? Like starting to see the threat and trying to ramp up more of their efforts. And are not familiar with State Forest Service, because a lot of times our more experienced commissioners talk about your great relations with State Forest Service. So do you have a recommendation of how I can kind of help connect some of those dots between State Forest Service and commissioners where there isn't a State Forest Service office?
So let me just drop. I don't know if I shared this or not. I dropped so many links in here for you.
No, we
But
love
this
links.
map is great. So if you click on a particular office, either in the map itself, it'll tell you what counties it serves.
Okay.
And so this is really the best resource.
Okay.
Like I said, we don't necessarily have like unlimited capacity to go and be everywhere all at once, but
Sure.
we know who they should call.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that makes us such a useful entity out there in the world is that we just know everybody. Like we know all the not-for-profits, we know all the collaboratives, we sit on them. We've got partnerships with the U.S. Forest Service, the BLM, the NRCS. That's why I say we're the glue. We just hold on like all these projects that we're sort of shooting at the middle of it all, oftentimes pulling them together and getting the management plan written and then administering the contracts. And so sharing this with them and just saying, hey, here, if you're not familiar with these offices, and especially for folks, I think it's Lake County where Leadville is, Summit County,
Yeah.
Frisco,
Mhm.
like we're trying to get an office in Eagle, for example. We're trying to get the agreement in place. So we're trying to be where the action is basically, where we can be the most useful. And so
Sure.
that's where I'd encourage them to use us as a conduit, not necessarily to do the work depending on what you need done, but to get you to those who can help them do it, or to provide them with resources they can then distribute, and then funding sources that are available.
That's great.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, just in closing, I've evacuated 3 times from wildland fire, have been prepped for a 4th. I lived through the Waldo Canyon fire. I lived in the Springs, and lost fence and didn't lose my house. Thought I did. And Hayman fire was the first big wake-up call in Park County. And we know the reality and we take it seriously up here. And so we
Your
appreciate,
audio just cut out a little bit, Commissioner.
whoops, sorry.
Okay, I heard you.
But anyway,
Oh.
we appreciate you guys. And I cannot remember the gal's name, but she does come to our emergency services meetings. We've got ES Council once a month, and her name is Brenda, I'm thinking. Anyway, we appreciate you guys and all the work you do. So thank you.
Oh yeah, I'm glad we were able to connect. Glad I was able to share some resources with you. We're always here to help. Appreciate what all you're doing.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so
Yep, yeah, and
much.
Kate, if you ever want me to come back for anything, just let me know. I'm
Yeah,
happy to present on this topic or others.
that'd be great.
All right.
Thank you.
Always welcome in Park County too. I mean,
Oh, I love it
couldn't
up
get
there.
better
It's
than this.
great.
Yeah.
All right, take care.
We'll see you.
Thank
Bye.
you.